In ancient Egypt, not many people could read. It was just a fraction of the population who could read. So symbols of animals and other things that you could find in nature were used to exemplify how things work. So for example, we have the god Horus. So Horus is the god of many things. The god of the sky, the god of the midday sun. So this god is the god of the sky. So we have to connect this image, this attribute, to something related to the sky. So we have the falcon, right? We have the hawk, right? We have kestrels, right? And remember, Horus is also the god of the sun, the midday sun. So the falcons and hawks and kestrels, they were animals only seen during the day. So as these animals fly very high in the sky during the day, well, let's correlate these animals to Horus, right? So it's not that Horus was a hawk or falcon god. It was that those animals were used to exemplify what is the essence of that particular god. When I studied about ancient religions and their scriptures, I learned about something called religious situatedness. And religious situatedness is the system that puts us in one situation, observing the other situation that happened a while ago in another economical and societal system, in another era, in another country with different rules and different cultures, right? So when we observe today something from ancient Egypt, we have to distance ourselves from the world we are in today and from the information we gathered from Egypt, in order to understand ancient Egypt. So we have to think really differently, right? And back in the day in Egypt, they would know, the Egyptians, they would know that animals, they weren't worshipped. They understood, they knew, it was common sense that animals were just symbols of those gods. They didn't believe that those gods were the animals incarnated, and they didn't believe that those animals were somehow the gods, or they were very similar to the gods, or even that the gods had that appearance. They believed that animals were used to exemplify the gods. Today we are in this religious situatedness. When we study ancient religions, we think here today in the 21st century and 20th century, and we think that they would worship animals, right? And that's based on the pictures that we see, the photos, the history. But we are in this situatedness. In ancient Egypt, the thing was a bit different. Animals, they weren't worshipped. And that's quite the opposite, right? Animals would be mass bred and sold in order to become votive offerings to all of those gods that they represented. So I'm gonna give an example of votive offering in ancient Egypt. So you remember that Horus is the god of, amongst other things, the sky and the sun, and hawks and falcons and kestrels. They were related to Horus, and Horus had this appearance, right? But little do we know that in ancient Egypt, there was this business which is equivalent today to alcohol consumption and alcohol marketing and alcohol business. There was this business in ancient Egypt that would sell animals for offering. So sell animals and obviously wax for embalming them and all of the other things and jewelry like to put inside of the animals. So it was a big business back in the day. So you would go to Egypt and see so many markets selling different types of animals, cages upon cages, with all of the animals for the offerings, So we have like these examples of Horus, and they would then give the offering to the god, getting the falcon or the kestrel or the hawk, and they would overfeed them, right? Giving them like a last supper, so they would be better received by the gods. So they would like force feed these animals with mice and other insects and other things. Obviously the animals would choke to death. Some other times they would just like remove all of their organs with them alive, remove all of the organs and replace those organs with jewelry, right? So the god would appreciate it more, and they would obviously embalm it and give as an offering. So the hawk, the falcons, they weren't worshipped, they were used to be given as votive offerings. Another example that I really like tapping on is about the cat. I think that the cat is very renowned as this Egyptian animal of worship, and a lot of people here today believe that cats were once worshipped in Egypt, and that's not true, based on, again, anthropology and excavations and, studies without the situatedness that we have today. So cats in ancient Egypt, they started with Bastet. So Bastet is that cat goddess. So the history of Bastet is that Bastet, she was the goddess of war, and she was the goddess of, she was a lioness, goddess of war. Eventually, right, I'm just summarizing everything. So eventually, another goddess showed up, which was Sekhmet. And Sekhmet was also a lioness and a goddess of war, related to war, and, very fierce as well. So the worshippers, they seen these two goddesses. They were very similar. They were both felines, they were both lioness, and they were both warriors. So we have to separate them. So Sekhmet kept then all of the attributes related to war and to strength and, being a lioness. And Bastet then was left with the more docile and sweet and gentle aspects of a feline. So they were like, okay, so she's a cat, because what is a cat in those terms? It's a more gentle, domesticated version of a lioness, right? So remember, Bastet was initially a goddess of, war, and a goddess, fierce goddess. So as she was given these attributes of a cat, then people wrongfully started giving Bastet aspects of the animal, the cat. So, Bastet, started being related to domesticity, but she wasn't really. It was because she was attributed to the image of a cat. And, Bastet, eventually, she became this symbol of motherhood and procreation. But that is because cats, they procreate quite a lot. And whenever they procreate, which is like nearly every year, they give birth to like 8 kittens or, 6 or something like that. So it's a lot of babies there. So Bastet was correlated to that. But Bastet, initially, she didn't have any of these attributes of the cat, right? And another thing is that, like, Bastet started being correlated to, the protection of the house, the protection of the house against snakes and, mice and, insects and disease, right? Disease because, the mice and the insects, they would, bring disease, and the cats, what do? They go after, the mice, and they go after the insects. So Bastet initially, remember, she didn't have anything to do with the house or, disease, but because she got these attributes from the cat, right? Later on in her worship, then she started like absorbing these. What is the whole thing about the cat? That was a big business in Egypt. As I said, equivalent to alcohol today. So it was like a big business. It was everywhere, and it would move a lot of money, right? So there was like markets full of cats, cages upon cages of cats for being used as votive offerings for Bastet. People had pets. They had dogs, they had cats, but cats, they weren't worshipped. Dogs, they weren't worshipped. They were used as votive offerings. Cats, they would be overfed with mice and other insects, and they would obviously be killed, and, they would have their organs removed and replaced by jewelry, so Bastet would like the offerings even more. Although today we see the statuettes of Bastet, of the cat, and it's beautiful, and the goddess, and the cat. The cat, the animals, they weren't worshipped. The image of the cat, on the other hand, it was worshipped. It was the image, right? People needed that attribute right, to relate to. So remember Horus. How can we remember Horus, right? Okay, so the falcon makes us remember Horus because, you know, the falcon is like in the sky, up high in the sky. It's probably the birds that flies the highest, and you know, it's there during the day. And the same thing for Bastet. She's the feline and she's like in the house and she procreates. Remember, it was again wrong because I mean she lost her attributes to Sekhmet, but that's another story. The animals, they weren't worshipped in Egypt. We also have the history of Anubis, and Anubis is the dog god, the god of the underworld and death and embalming and, you know, the underworld, darkness, all of that, cemeteries. But this god receives the attributes from the dog. So it wasn't the other way around. It wasn't like, oh, the god has these attributes, so let's relate this god to an animal. No, it was the other way around. So as dogs, they would, you know, be in the cemeteries when people would obviously bury their, you know, family members, right? They wouldn't bury them like that deep. So you would often see wild jackals and dogs kind of like in the cemetery trying to dig up, you know, and eat. So then people started relating dogs to Anubis because remember, Anubis is a god of the cemeteries and the underworld, and if dogs are there all the time, oh, okay, so that's Anubis. So then they started giving Anubis that image of a dog, and eventually Anubis started acquiring aspects of the dog, but still upon worshipping and offering Anubis, they would use dogs. They would kill dogs, overfeed dogs with jewelry or other animals, embalm them and put them as an offering. So dogs and cats, they weren't respected. All of those gods in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, who had a face of an animal or body of an animal, they weren't really the animals in ancient Egypt. They weren't worshipped. And again, it's about the situatedness. So back in the day in Egypt, over there, they knew that quite clearly. Today, because of religious situatedness, we tend to, when we don't have a lot of knowledge, we tend to believe that at some point, you know, cats, they were adored in Egypt, and dogs, they were adored because such very important gods looked like the animal, but that's not reality. And this doesn't regard Egypt only. If you know about India and other regions of the world, of the ancient world, where they would somehow worship animals, you can see that the artists, they would use the image of the animals to illustrate the gods. So it would be easier to disseminate that the worship of that god, and it would be easier for people to understand the attributes of that god, right? And that's quite remarkable in ancient India, right? Hinduism is fantastic, and if you see the art, right, of Indian gods and goddesses, you'd see a lot of attributes in one image. So it's not as plain as it was in Egypt. It wasn't just like the cat goddess. In India, you would see, you know, a god that looks like an animal merged with another animal holding three things at the same time, with a different crown and with another thing under their feet and different colors. So you see a lot of information in one picture. Why? Because nobody would read. Nobody knows how to read, remember. So they have to pass that on images. They have to illustrate, you know, their gods with those images. So the monkey god Hanuman is not a monkey. Back in ancient India, they knew that the god wasn't a monkey, but the monkey is a very kind of fast animal, and it's an animal that is quick and strong and jumps and do everything, and it's very smart, you know, it's like one of the smartest animals, etc. So when you portray Hanuman as the monkey, not only one monkey, they merged like two different monkeys in one god, you get like this idea of that god. Okay, so that god is very quick and it's good at probably fighting, and that's what the myths of Hanuman is about. It's about like facing, you know, the demons and facing the obstacles, and, you know, jumping and, you know, finding a way. So that's how they do, you know, they use the animals to illustrate. what I'm focusing on is like ancient Egypt, where they would use those same animals, the cat, the dog, the falcon, and so many other animals as offerings. So they would kill them, mass kill them. The business was big. Again, the business of selling the animals and selling wax and selling other ingredients and selling jewelry. Let's not mistake the symbolism of animals to animal worship. Back in Egypt, they wouldn't worship the animal. They would use the symbolism to illustrate what they want to pass regarding that religion. Nevertheless, the blame is not onto the gods and goddesses. They have nothing to do with that. It was humans who started doing that. It was humans giving these offerings, and it was humans mass breeding animals, and it was humans making all of these correlations. So these entities, these gods, they may exist, they may use the archetypes of, you know, a cat or a dog. And the archetype, by the way, it's like a mask. It's like this spiritual language that, you know, any entity can use, so then they can portray themselves into that archetype and then do something, right? So yeah, these entities, they may exist, and they may use these archetypes of animals to appear to their followers, or in dreams, or astral projections, or to mediums, or they can lead other groups of spirits in the spiritual planes, looking like their archetype, but that doesn't mean that they actually are dogs or cats, right? They use the archetype because then the people believe in that. So that's why the spirit does that. They cover themselves in that image, right, that people believed in, because then it's easier for them, and then eventually they don't need the archetype anymore, right? It's just like something outside the topic, but it's very important to talk about. So when you, let's say, ask for the help of a particular angel, and let's say that, you know, you come to actually see that angel in this trance, or, you know, astral projection, or in your dreams, it doesn't mean that it's actual that angel with that appearance. It might be like another spirit, completely like different from that angel, but, you know, the spirits used their archetype, that kind of language, so you can understand, right? So when you pray to Jesus to come and help you, that doesn't keep a Hindu god or entity to come and help you, right? They can come and just portray them as something Christian for you, because what matters is like the help. It's pretty much when you have a cat or a dog in the streets crying, needing help, they are crying for their mothers, but it doesn't keep you from going there and helping, you know, because that's what's important. Because of situatedness, we believe that cats and other animals were worshipped in Egypt. They would never, you know, in Egypt, they would eat every type of meat that we know today. They would eat gazelles, they would eat buffaloes and cows and things like that. They would eat a lot of types of animals, you know, birds and fish and all the animals we know today. Animals, they weren't worshipped. They had pets, they had dogs, and they had cats. There was a time in Egypt where they couldn't kill cats because of Bastet, right? So nobody could kill cats. But the thing is, they couldn't kill cats outside a religious slaughter, outside a religious ritual. So if you are in the middle of the streets and you kill a cat, you would be persecuted, right? Or if you're like at home and you kill a cat, you'd be persecuted. But if you are offering Bastet and you kill 100 cats, that's fine, you know? So you see that everything was conditioned to the religion. So it's not about the cat, it's about the religion, you know, and it's about, you know, Bastet. It's not about the cat or their appearance or what they really mean. So animals, they never got really the status that we thought that they had. That's it for today. I just want us to understand that ancient religions, they are fascinating when, you know, you study and when you know, when you look, but we need to also separate the whole kind of mystical illusion that everything was perfect and, you know, they were so super connected and they were like a lot more advanced than we are today. That's not true, right? A lot of things, a lot of good things were channeled back in the day, like in Egypt and India and China and in the Mesopotamia and everywhere, but they weren't more advanced in terms of enlightenment than we are today, right? Not that we are anywhere advanced, but they weren't more like connected, or they knew more than we know today. That's, you know, kind of a myth, because again, we are in the situatedness. We are in the 21st century, and we see pictures, and, you know, we talk and we read here and there, and we see documentaries, and we think that we are so absorbed in technology and, you know, in these big cities. And back in the day, they were connected to nature, and they were connected to spirituality. I mean, many people were, but it doesn't mean that the cults that emerged and the religions that emerged back in the day, they weren't like much better than what we try and, you know, do today. Again, we're talking about animals, and we can see that the business of animal embalming and killing and for offerings, it was massive. So this is not enlightenment. Okay, so see you soon.